Alright guys, thanks very much. My name's Angus Fontaine, I'm the publisher of Time Out, and thank you very much for coming along this evening to a Time Out FBI forum, Crossroads, where to next for Sydney's nightlife?
Well, the simple answer is yes, it has a diversity, but the second answer is it's not actually government's job to sort that out for us. The fact is, King's Cross in most respects is safer, friendlier and more civilised now than it was when I was a little kid. It certainly is more so than when I was a teenager. There'll still be the same number of people out on the streets looking for something to do, but there won't be anywhere to go inside. And the tragedy about the Kelly case, I mean, it's tragic on so many levels, but here's the thing. This poor guy was attacked at about 10 o'clock in the evening, which is pretty early, outside on the street, making new rules for what happens inside the venues, where basically people are safe. And you can look at the research. I've published a whole bunch of links on my blog, and essentially the research tells you that inside the premises is not where the problem is. The problem is on the streets. And the other issue is policing. You know, having another crackdown on venues is only going to hurt the music scene, and it's not going to do anything for street safety.
Well, the thing that you can't police and you can't control is the idiot factor. And you can have 100% CCTV coverage, you can have a police officer on every corner, and you can't say that someone's not going to do something wrong. Crime has always existed, crime will always exist. That's why we have prisons. You can't eradicate crime, you can't eradicate stupid behaviour.
You know, anywhere you have people, you have the potential for violence, right? Like, it's, you know, like, sure, you know, you can just shut everybody up at 6 o'clock and call it curfew, and there'll be no outside violence. And so this idea of, you know, some of these like the things about, you know, lockouts and you know, and small bars and pointing the finger and that's just totally looking at the symptoms of something that's underlying. And if you look at violence in Sydney, it's not just about the issue. We need to track other types of violence in Sydney, like the rise in things like road rage, and the rise in, like, you know, people at Vodafone stores getting yelled at by customers and things like that, right? And it shows, I think, an underlying issue in the city that there's a growing tension in this city, and I don't know if it's because of I suspect it's because of lack of infrastructure by successive governments. I suspect that it's got to do with the fact that it's a city that's under pressure, and it's a city that's more expensive than anywhere else. And you add all these things together, and I think we're getting increasingly angrier and angrier, and I think this is another cultural aspect. It's not just alcohol; it's also the stress involved with the city. Yeah, I mean, drink driving took a generation to change. Cigarettes took a generation to change. It's a generational change. It's not something that's going to change. You know, it's not something that, like, you know, like I said, you just can't point the finger at the government and say fix it tomorrow. It has to be a generational change.
We've all dragged our girlfriends out of the car park after too many strong boys at 2 o'clock in the morning at some point in our life, right? It doesn't mean the apocalypse is coming. And at the moment, we live in a city where, in this area, over the last 5 years, and we can check the Bureau of Crime Stats, the violent crime rates here in King's Cross have dropped by about 6%. So there's actually a net decline in violence going on in Sydney at the moment, and there's a net decline in violence. So here's the point, right? You live in a place with a large concentration of people, but the bulk of the violence happening in this state is happening in private homes. It's happening against women and children, and by and large, what we have in this state, you can look at all of the reports of assaults, and about 1% of them happen randomly out on the street. The vast bulk of them are happening in private places. But we're having a panic attack here at the moment in King's Cross because it's something that allows people who've got too old and too boring to go out themselves, but who do things like run the government and run the police force. And those people can decide that by inventing a youth panic, that young people are out of control and young people drink too much and young people should all go home, and the police commissioner has said there's no reason anyone shouldn't be home in bed by 1 a.m. To which I say, it's his job to tell you to go home to bed, just like it's your mom's job to tell you to go home to bed. But that doesn't mean as an adult that he has any right to tell you to do it.
Cass can deny there's an issue here, all she likes, but it's quite clear to everyone that there is an issue here. And I think the issue is the concentration of venues in this area. There are 193 licensed venues, and there's a concentration of people in this area, and they can't get out when they want to get out. So we have a really serious problem of an average of 20,000 people on Bayswater Road, Darlinghurst Road. And we know from work we've done over the last year, when we've surveyed that area at 1 a.m, we have seen 80 serious incidents. Now that would have required 80 police responses. Now clearly that is not possible. So we do have an issue here, and we do have an issue in the public domain on the streets. And when the Minister announced quite publicly at a forum at Town Hall that he was going to do an audit, and he did do an audit, and you know he's found lots of breaches. So whilst your establishments are run very responsibly, not all are, and we have issues, and you can't deny it, Cass.
Despite the fact that I think you're grossly misrepresenting my position, I haven't said there's no problem. I've said there's a problem being blown out of all proportion. I do want to just step in and defend Clover for a moment, as undeserved as it may be. The council does not police the streets. It's not their job. They don't run the police force. It is fairly and squarely the state government's problem to police the streets and provide public transport.
I think if people think they can get away with something, they will. They'll try and get away with it. But if they know there's lots of early coppers in the area ready to jump if they do something, over time, and this won't happen overnight, but over time, the attitudes will change and people will realise there is a consequence for their action. And I think that's part of the problem as well. People just aren't taking responsibility for their own actions.
Everyone in our sector says do not work with the police, they're incredibly difficult to work with. And I made the decision that, well, if it was not, my grandfather used to say, if not me, who? Who is going to be the first one to say, let's work with the police to work better with the community, with the young people? And to cut a long story short, we reduced the underage drinking in that level by creating safer boundaries, but actually bringing the kids in with their young parents. And I'm about to say something that could be taken a few different ways, but we actually taught the parents how to teach their young people how to drink. Okay, now I know that sounds risque, but the idea was I was saying to these parents, your kids are going to drink anyway, okay? Your kids are going to drink anyway. And the parents, by turning a blind eye, were doing the worst thing possible. Now I was not, and I never will condone underage drinking, but unless we face up to the fact that these young people are going to drink anyway, that problem persists. I think there's two important things here to look at. It might be CCTVs, it might be transport. First and foremost, it's a cultural issue. And the second most important thing is be very careful about, you don't erase a problem, you can minimise it, but you also push it away if you're not careful about how that happens.
I say about the Gordian knot is famous because it was confected complexity. Everyone said no one can untangle that, it's too complicated. What genius could uncomplicate that tangled Gordian knot? And Alexander the Great put his sword through it. He did not untangle everything at once. He simply put a sword through it. And what I'm saying to you is that more cops and better transport solutions are the Gordian knot solution to our streets. There is nothing wrong inside our venues.
Well, I just can't agree with that. And when a recent audit was done, a lot of breaches were found. The problem is there are too many venues concentrated in a small area, attracting too many people, and they're drinking for too long. And that's just the fact. And we really need to look at not allowing that to continue. And yes, the government did fail. The freeze came in, and there was meant to be an opportunity there to develop solutions. The government failed. It was because of the pressure of the liquor industry. I think the government is now trying to address the issue, and I hope we do get some outcome.
The idea here is all of you are called upon. All of you have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to actually be a part of some sort of solution. And if we walk out of here and continue to point the finger and blame someone else and not take that responsibility, and I'm asking you, if it's to take the issue up with Clover further, or the bars or whatever, to do that, but your responsibility will continue past tonight. The point I'm trying to make is that if your mind is open to a bigger picture than one death if you're responsible for that, and for the man who said that there are crocodile tears up here, I live and I breathe those deaths every day. So if you don't think big, then that isn't the end of it. You will see more, and it is your responsibility too.
Now this guy really does it.